Hello and welcome to the recap for day number 15 here in the simulator. My name is Alex, and no, you are not misreading here. I did trade only 10 shares today, and I'm finishing up with a single trade day, which is only the second time in this account that that's happened. And to be honest, this is probably the day that I'm the most happy about in maybe the whole account so far. I came into today with an attitude of looking to just scalp, not looking for home runs, just looking to book a little bit here and there, whatever I could. And the attitude I came in with is a lot like the one I came in with earlier in the account when things were not so hot. And I feel like a lot of the momentum that we've seen over the last week or week and a half has really tapered off. And so I didn't want to get myself in trouble. And after doing so much studying over the weekend and again last night, I really came in with an attitude of just looking for really small targets and not looking to take a lot of risk, looking to really correct a lot of the mistakes that I've been making so far, and just to clean up a lot of the sloppiness that I've made myself guilty over throughout this entire account basically so far. And I do believe I did that today. That's why I'm so happy with the result. So without further delay, let's get into the trade I took. So when I first woke up, I opened my broker screen right away. I didn't do my pre-market routine. I didn't start that right away. I kind of just took a look at what's going on. I woke up a little bit early. I beat my alarm by a few minutes. And so I decided to just take a look. Let's see what's on the gap scanner. And the thing I saw at the top was what I initially saw was $3, and it was up 30%. And I was like, oh, cool. There's a $3 stock up 30%. And then I opened it up and realized, wait a minute, no, that's not a $3 stock. That's a $300 stock. And then I thought to myself, when the heck does a stock in that price range gap up 30%? That just doesn't happen generally. And, I looked it up, saw the news. There was very positive news on it. And this is roughly where I started thinking about my entry, the place where I have the charts adjusted to here. And I noticed a pattern of really VWAP respect. That's what I was mostly looking at. I noticed that every time it had dropped down close to the VWAP, it would shoot back up on pretty strong volume. And so what I thought is if ever we could get the volume to push it further, then this looked really good to me for a retest of the pre-market high up at 327. Now, for the first few minutes while I was watching this, during this consolidation period right here, I was thinking pretty aggressive thoughts. I looked at my buying power of 9,600, or at the time it was 9,300, I believe, and I started doing the math on what the maximum share size was, and I determined that I could take 30 shares of this, and then I figured out the math on the upside and thought, holy crap, this could be like a multi-$100 winner if it does retrace to the pre-market high. But then I did the math on the risk. And I suddenly took a step back because I was like, oh shit, like this can actually go pretty bad on me as well. And the place I was initially risking off my hard stop was going to be 294. Now, like I said, initially I was thinking pretty aggressive thoughts in terms of share size. I then dialed it back to think that I should probably take a 10 share entry and then perhaps add half a position once or twice on the way up. Now, what I ended up doing when I saw volume confirmation, first on this candle here, and then again on this candle here, what this was the buying pressure breaking a hidden seller at 300. And I took that as a pretty bullish sign, and I thought it represented a very strong chance that we would push up through the high of this consolidation period, which was 303. And so I quickly changed the plan to just cut my first entry in half to just 5 shares and get in a little bit early. So on this candle here, I got in, as you can see by the green arrow. I took my entry for 5 shares at $302. Now, only a few minutes after I got in, maybe a minute and a half, that's when the real volume started coming in on this candle here at 7:30. And almost as soon as this candle started spiking past the 303 level, I decided to reset my primary stop to exactly 300, and then my hard stop was only going to be a few dollars lower at 298 and a few cents. I forget exactly where. And the reason for that was because of the retest of 300, which really stalled the action. When it retested back down to 300, everything almost stopped. And then as the price started curling up, that's when more substantial orders started going through the tape. And I saw that as a sign that this is really strong. And if it fails from this point, if we can't break through and get a substantial move, then I no longer like my idea on this stock. And so I decided to really cut the risk down and narrow my risk from, I think it was $7.50 initially to just $2. And that really helped me have confidence in my add-ons, which, as you'll learn in a moment, never got filled. So the first place that I had intended to add on was at above 308 rather. I was looking for signs of resistance on the level 2, and I wanted to see volume break those positions that represented resistance. And my first attempt to add on, which was going to be another 5 shares, was just above 308, and I never got filled, and I didn't really like the situation going up further than that, so I decided to wait for the next level. And the next level turned out to be 310. And once again, I tried to add above 310 and I didn't get filled again. And by this point, I thought, well, these add-ons are going to bring my average up a little too high. The volume is not quite as strong as I was expecting, even though this is a really expensive stock. And, this kind of volume is, relatively pretty big. I thought that the price had really moved up too close to my target to really justify being able to add on again. And at that point, I thought, well, maybe I should take a half position add-on. And then I got a kick out of that because I wasn't even sure if it would be 2 or 3 shares if I used that hotkey. But in any case, it was going to be such a small number of shares that I figured it's not worth the commissions to take this add-on, and that I should just ride it up until I don't feel comfortable anymore. Now, above 310, for whatever reason, I got suddenly hit with the notion, like the thought of, wait a minute, what am I even doing in this trade? This is so far out of my normal range in so many ways. Like, why am I assuming that this is going to behave the same way that a microcap would or a super low float would? And it just kind of scared me off for some reason. I'm not sure why it came so suddenly and why I hadn't considered this all that much previously. I thought maybe it was because I got involved in this trade so quickly after waking up. I wasn't super refreshed. I hadn't eaten, I hadn't showered, and these kinds of things. And this is when I started kind of getting spooked by my own thoughts. And I thought, like, uh-oh, I'm not prepared. Like, am I setting myself up to give back these gains? And what's going to happen? And why do I even think it's going to 327 to begin with? And at that point, I started looking for the door. And I started looking for, some areas in the tape which I wasn't super confident in. And basically, as soon as I saw the sign of trouble, I started throwing out orders, and the one that I got filled was a pretty good order on the candle that I exited on. You can see the red arrow. It's almost a top tick here at $13, which is 50 cents off of the high. And if I fast forward the chart, you'll see it did go higher. It did reach 20 eventually, but it didn't reach 20 before hitting 18 and pulling back down to 13. So I'm not 100% convinced, knowing myself, that I would have been willing to hold through that kind of a pullback. Just not being familiar with these types of numbers, not being accustomed to seeing a price drop of $5 and being okay with it, even though I did book $11 per share on this, I just suddenly realized I was uncomfortable, and so I decided the safest thing to do would just be to get out of the trade and continue with my pre-market checklist and hopefully find some kind of low floater that I could play more aggressively coming out of the bell. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the video, I came into today with a really hard-set scalp mentality. I wasn't looking to take big risk. I was really just looking to get in, get out type trades. And this was a really good opportunity to do this. And I think that my analysis of the setup was very strong. I think my entry was pretty strong. It was just a few, maybe 90 seconds away from being perfect. The one thing I think I did wrong on this trade was not hold up to a little bit higher. You can see that the volume profile on this rise up was very strong, and I exited on the ramp up towards going up on the volume, and I think that really does represent a mistake. I think that ideally maybe I could have pushed it a couple more dollars up, but in a worst case scenario, I think I should have exited around $15 on this candle here at 937 on the way back down. I think using the previous 1 minute low should have been a really good trailing stop type of strategy, and I didn't do that. So I'm a little, there is always room for improvement, and I think on this trade, that's where I had room for improvement. Now, on the other hand, once I closed this trade, I did feel a little bit giddy about it. This is a record-setting trade in a lot of different ways. I think profit per share is probably a record. I'd have to check that. But the price is definitely a record. In terms of my watch list too, it's the first time ever that there's been something on my watch list that sits above the SPY. Because normally, now it's back down below, but normally I arrange these from top to bottom of price. The price line is where I organize them. And this was the first time ever that the SPY was in the second place on my watch list. And for some reason, I just came out of this like really proud that I had booked $11 per share. And I started being really funny about it. As I commenced my pre-market routine, I went outside for a smoke just before my shower, and there was a squirrel. There's a bunch of squirrels who always play in my backyard, and there was one particular squirrel who kind of started eyeballing me and making aggressive sounds. I'm not going to do an impression, but I know the sound to be one of a challenging squirrel. And I started like chirping the squirrel, like, oh, "Who are you talking to? I just made $11 per share. What have you done today?" type thing. And for some reason, this continued throughout my pre-market routine, and it put me in a really good mood. And I think that is actually noteworthy. I don't think I'm just rambling here, because I was walking around making all these $11 per share jokes, and I continued in the chat room later on in the day. And I must say that had a really huge boost on the way that I felt going into the day. I woke up pretty neutral, but all my jokes about the $11 per share, about like, oh, should I have this for breakfast or this for breakfast? I'd be like, oh, this breakfast is clearly designed for somebody who just made $11 per share. And just things like this. And so that's a little side note that I'll throw out there before I get into something that I learned today that's probably going to turn out to be pretty important. Now, if you've watched all the recaps so far, you'll know that on day number 9 right here, on the 11th of October, I made a comment about getting spooked out of a trade on SES. I had a really early entry into SES, which turned out to be the trigger for all the momentum over the days after. And I made a comment of I couldn't make sense of the tape. What I was seeing on the tape was there were flashes of all kinds of different orders, and I couldn't make sense of it, and that spooked me off the trade. And today, I finally had the epiphany that, wait a minute, this all happens at 8 o'clock a.m. It happened on multiple stocks, and I just happened to notice it today. And I'm a little bit embarrassed that I haven't noticed this pattern in the past. And as of yet, I don't know what it means. But it was clear as day today that something like 4 names at a time, I have the candle highlighted here, at 8 a.m., all of a sudden the tape starts flashing with all 5 possible colors. And the orders to me don't make a ton of sense. Like we just saw one go by there. This is above the ask, and the red is below the bid. And so I had all 5 of the possible colors flashing at me in the tape. And like I said, I still don't know what it means or why it happens, but that's something I'm definitely going to look into and hopefully find an answer. If I don't do that before you see this video, then please comment below. If you know the answer and you know why this happens, please let me know, because this is the type of thing that I would expect to happen at the bell, not before, because that's when, stop orders start getting triggered and market orders start getting triggered and stuff like that. But at 8 a.m., we're still in the pre-market phase, so I don't quite understand this yet. But you can see the range that came out of nowhere on BIIB in this particular case. It had nothing to do with the price action. We went up to 320 and down to 295. And yet the actual, the level 2 didn't actually change. So all of the orders above and all the orders below, those are above the ask and below the bid. And so that's just a little comment about something I learned today. And I'm pretty excited to have learned this and to have something to study going forward. So as I close this out and give you a video of my updated trade log, I'll say that I spent about 2.5 hours scanning for other stuff in the market today. I was looking especially, let me just open, ETON and VVPR were 2 that I thought had pretty high potential if they could get volume towards them. They did not. The main focus of attention for traders today was TROV, and that's one that I'd pretty much scratched off my list long before the bell rang. I didn't like the daily chart. I thought the news was ridiculous. It was totally derivative of past news. And it has a long history of going to red after gap ups, and I just didn't like it at all. And so I decided to avoid everything else that I saw, and I think that reflects the discipline focus that I had coming into today, And the only setup that I did take saw strong resolution very quickly after I entered. And I think that all comes together to show that my discipline game was on point today. And that's a real confidence booster for me. If I had taken a bad trade and it went $300 into the green, that wouldn't necessarily boost my confidence. In fact, it would probably hurt it. But in this case today, I stuck to my game plan. I was really selective about what I took, and the only thing that I took was something that worked out very quickly, where I was able to cut my risk down almost as soon as I got in the trade. So I'm super happy about that. And although I would definitely like to see a lot better momentum carry through to tomorrow, I'm going in already with a very positive attitude. So super happy about that. And I'll see you guys hopefully tomorrow with more green days and more green trades to report.